So, those who were sterilized, kumbaga, if you will fall under this feeble-minded na people or like with mental deficiency, you will be sterilized. And so, those who were sterilized were disproportionately people of color with low socioeconomic status or disabled. So yeah, before, pag for them, bobo ka, hindi ka pwede mag-anak. Para daw, ang new generation will be, you know, much more smarter, or like, much more desirable ang mga qualities. And of course, mababa talaga ang makuha ng mga people who are black, or people of color, or with low socioeconomic status, or disabled. Because, how come? How come naman magtaas sila sa test when they could even read, they don't have the opportunity to learn? Gosh, people, it was so, I'm sorry, I was so just very carried away by these stories. It was so very unethical, but yeah, this is our history. This is what made us up. Okay, so I will give you last one, which is also a shocking one, because I know, we all know who is Lewis Terman, right? In intelligence testing, is si Lewis Terman, a psychologist, early EPA president, and creator of still influential IQ test. O, diba? So, like I called earlier, the Stanford Binet, as mentioned elsewhere in the chapter, diba? Si Stanford, si Lewis Terman, diba? Si may Binet intelligence test. Pero, ano nila yun, parang, gi-improve sa Stanford. Si Lewis Terman ang gumawa nun, which resulted to Binet Stanford intelligence test. Or, yeah, like that. Si Lewis Terman, he described black people as a dull due to racial inheritance. He also recommended that black children be educated differently than white children because their intellectual skills were limited to concrete and practical tasks, not the ability to think abstractly. So yeah, for Lewis Terman, he believed that black people or black children only think in a concrete, di ba may dalawang, what do we call this? Dalawang type of thinking, the concrete and the abstract. Yung concrete is yung what you see and things like that. Yung abstract is kind of like ideas and imaginary things. For him, black people or black children can't think abstractly. So they should be educated differently than the white people. So that's what Terman proposed. Yep. Yeah. Those were just some of the racism and prejudice in the history of clinical psychology. Just to read my written report, and marami pa doon. Some shocking, some amusing, some are, will give you emotions that you don't know what is called. Yeah, but it's the history, and it's what, nagmold kung ano na yung psychology ngayon. Parang like it's a canon event, it has to happen. Okay, so, we'll proceed. So yeah, thankfully the field of clinical psychology and psychology more broadly have made progress in terms of racism and prejudice na. Kaya ngayon, yeah, we're trying to really advocate for mental health awareness and for mental health equality, that it happens to everyone, no matter your race, your age, and your culture and all that it really happens and it is real. Okay, so I'm happy that we really progress, although it's not yet perfect, but we progress. For example, in 2021, APA published a formal apology for its role in promoting racism and racial discrimination over the history of psychology. That's what we all are here for, the accountability. Okay, so yeah, nag-apologize naman, although the damage has done, but yeah, at least it has shown some, accountability over what happened. APA, our accountability queen, yeah, that's a very nice work. Of course, they made an apology and they took actions for those things they did that happened that were, very unethical and very unprofessional. So it was a good one. It was a very progressive move. Yep, that's all for the racism and prejudice that in the history of clinical psychology. We'll now proceed to the assessment. Of course, assessment is part of clinical psychology, because in clinical psychology we have to assess the patient, assess the person, and such. So, when the assessment came, there came the diagnostic issues. So, categorizing mental illness has been an issue central to clinical psychology. Since Whitmer defined the field, actually the debate began long before when Whitmer entered the picture. With so many mental disorders tossed around as common terminology today, it can be difficult to imagine a time when such labels didn't exist at all, at least not in any formal sense. Kaya diba, imagine look around you right now, there are many mental health disorders that are just, sometimes used, overused, misused, like depression, the anxiety, even the words gaslighting, the words manipulation, and such. So with that, in 1800s, in Europe, labeling systems for mental illness began to take shape in a very rudimentary way. Specifically, mental illnesses were often placed in one of two broad categories. So dati, diba, ngayon marami ng categories in DSM-5, like for example, the anxiety disorders and mood disorders, ganon. Pero dati, it was only labeled or categorized into two, the neurosis and psychosis. So, neurotic individuals were thought to suffer from some psychiatric symptoms, including what we call now anxiety and depression. So, yung mga neurotic na people, parang ang symptoms nila includes anxiety and depression. But to maintain an intact grasp on reality. Pero may pa rin sila ng reality. Psychotic individuals, on the other hand, demonstrated a break from reality in the form of hallucinations, delusions, or grossly disorganized thinking. So, yung commonly what we call now na mga schizophrenic na like, schizophrenic, yung may mga schizophrenia, sorry for the term, yung may mga schizophrenia, so parang psychosis pa yung tawag sa kanila before. So yun yung parang ano palang categorization before nung clinical mga mental health disorders, which is the neurosis and psychosis. So yeah. After that, we have Emil Kraepelin. Si Emil Kraepelin, considered as the father of descriptive psychiatry. He offered a different two-category system of mental illness. Si Kraepelin differentiated exogenous disorders, or caused by external factors, from endogenous disorders caused by internal factors, and suggested that exogenous disorders were the far more treatable type. So yung mga disorders na caused by external factors or exogenous ay mas more treatable. So, Kraepelin also assigned names to specific examples of disorder. In the broad term, dementia praecox, to describe one endogenous disorder similar to what is now known as schizophrenia. So, dementia praecox, ang tawag sa schizo before, according to Emil Kraepelin, okay? So, later, he also proposed terms such as paranoia, manic depressive psychosis, involutional melancholia, cyclothymic personality, and autistic personality. Terms that had not previously been coined. So parang si Emil Kraepelin, nag-coin siya ng mga bagong mga terms to call for psychological disorders or like mental health conditions. So kumbaga, dito din natin nakuha yung mga iba ngayon kasi sa makita nyo medyo familiar na yung iba, yung autism, yung cyclothymic, and such. Although, different na yung meaning nila ngayon, pero dito nag-root yung mga names na yun. Most of Kraepelin's specific terms have long since been replaced, but by offering such specific terminology, he set a precedent for the creation of diagnostic terms. So yun na nga, di ba, nagbago na yung mga meaning, but he set a precedent for some terms. Okay, so that creation of the terms he created actually eventually led to the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders. Yeah. So yung mga terms ni Emil Kraepelin, yun yung nag-lead into the making of the DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Okay. Yep. Then the original DSM was published by the American Psychiatric Association in 1952. Representing a more sophisticated attempt to define the organized mental diagnosis. A revision, or the DSM-2, followed. Alam naman natin to, diba? That followed in 1968, pero overview lang man ito. But it was not considered to be significantly different from the original. Parang may mga kunting na bago lang. So, however, the next revision, DSM-3, which arrived in 1980, signified a fundamentally different way of thinking about mental disorders. Where DSM and DSM-2 included somewhat vague descriptions of each other, the DSM-3 provided specific diagnostic criteria, list of indicating exactly what symptoms constitute every disorder. So, parang dito na nabuo yung mga different symptoms sa DSM-3. The DSM has been revised several more times with DSM-3R, DSM-4, DSM-4TR, DSM-5, and yep, ngayon yung DSM-5TR, considered the minor revision, but DSM-5 was a major revision with lots of new disorders, and when it arrived in 2013, it was accompanied by significant anticipation and controversy. So, yeah, although the DSM-5TR is the pinakabago ngayon, the latest, pero minor lang yung revisions niya from DSM-5. So, ang pinaka may major na revisions among all is yung DSM-5 talaga. Okay, so that's how, okay, the assessment or the diagnosis, that's the history of the diagnosis or the diagnostic procedure, no, and the names of the illnesses, and of course, the making of the DSM-5. So, of course, kasi nabuo ang DSM-5, talaga mawawala-wala yung mga issues. Okay, so, one of the issues is it a DSM disorder? Decisions to include or exclude potential disorder. So, dito na naman tayo nagkakalamangan, no? Okay, so ano ba yung mga dapat ilagay sa DSM? And what should not be put in there? And what are, or who are going to be the ones na maglalagay ng, or magiging benchmark for that disorder to be put in the DSM-5? So, before each edition of DSM is published, its authors oversee an extensive process during which they must, among other important tasks, decide whether or not to add certain experiences or sets of symptoms as official diagnosis. So, di ba, may mga na-add, like for every revisions, may mga bagong na-add na mga disorders, just like what we have talked or tackled last sa unang reporter natin, which is yung non-suicidal injury, yung hoarding disorder, ganon. So, yun daw, before mag-add ng bagong disorder, it was a very long and extensive process. So the implications of these classification decisions are quite significant for many people, including clients who could be assigned the new diagnosis, mental health professionals who may treat them, a health insurance company who pay for the treatment, and researchers who study the new diagnosis. Of course, very significant siya kung like may bagong disorder. For example, we'll have this, for example na lang yung PTSD. Di ba may bago ngayon, the CPTSD. So because it was new, and then ikaw as a patient, you are in an ongoing treatment for PTSD. Tapos because of this new mental health disorder, you are na-diagnose ka na naman for bago na, which is CPTSD. So of course yung treatment plan mo, yung therapy process, yung therapeutic technique or therapy technique na gagawin sa'yo will be magbabago na naman, 'di ba? So it is very significant pag may mga na-add na mga disorders kasi 'di ba? For example, ikaw you like to keep things and all such, pero di ba wala pa namang hoarding disorder dati. Tapos yun pala meron ng bago. So you think na normal ka pa, tapos bigla nagkaroon ng bagong disorder and tapos pasok ka pala doon. So it's very significant. Not just for the patient, for the mental health practitioner also. Kasi nga di ba, pag may bago, ibig sabihin may bago ka na namang i-learn na disorder and what are the effective ways to treat that and such. Kaya kahit sa mga insurance company din na nagbabayad ng mga mental disorder ng mga therapies and such to that, syempre they have to make new policies na naman over that new disorder. Okay, so it's very significant. Kaya there are a section of current edition in the DSM-5-TR that are list numerous proposed disorders that were considered for inclusion but rejected by DSM authors. So marami pa palang mga disorders na nasa list. No, pero it was rejected, yung mga proposed na disorders, because they are included as unofficial or conditions for further study. Baka kulang pa ng proof, kulang pa ng empirical evidence and such, no, para malagay sa DSM. With the hope that additional research will inform future decisions to include or exclude them as official disorders. Included among these proposed disorders are the following. So yeah, meron pang dito. Of course naman, 'di ba, ang DSM is nagbabago siya, 'di ba? Like may mga bago siyang mga editions, naglalabas ng mga editions. I think 10 years, every 10 years. I don't know if tama ang pagkaalala ko, it's every 10 years because may mga may mga conditions for further study ng mga diagnosis and talagang nagbabago and nag-a-add every time ang mga kasi nag-evolve naman ang world and nag-evolve ang world, of course, times changing, may mga nagbabago at may mga nag-a-add. So, yeah, kaya meron silang yung mga iba, kailangan pa ng additional research para ma-inform kung ilagay ba siya or hindi. So, meron ditong tatlo. So, yung iba sa mga na-reject na mga mental health condition. The one is internet gaming disorder. So, this was rejected, pero this could be, very relevant na disorder if ever, in which that person's internet game playing behavior causes clinically significant impairment or stress. The person is preoccupied with gaming, can't control their gaming behavior, experiences withdrawal when access is taken away, and experiences relationship problems due to gaming or has similar symptoms. So yeah, internet gaming disorder, especially na very taken over na tayo ng technology, I guess. Kaya, pero na-reject ito, pero it is for further, conditions for further study. So, medyo hindi ito imposible na malagay pa sa DSM. No? Okay, so, wala ito sa PPT ko. I wasn't able to put this sa PPT, pero meron sa written report, kaya, basahin nyo din ang written report kasi andun ang mga, itong mga 4 conditions for further study ng mga proposed mental disorder. Next is attenuated psychosis syndrome, in which the person experiences mild or brief delusions, hallucinations, or other psychotic phenomena. These are the same kinds of symptoms experienced by people with schizophrenia. But in attenuated psychosis syndrome, the symptoms will be more fleeting, less intense, and the person's perception of reality would remain largely intact. Okay, so para siyang schizophrenia, pero mas less severe, mas less enduring, and yung grasp sa reality ng people who are supposed to be experiencing this attenuated psychosis syndrome is mas intact kaysa sa may schizophrenia. So para siyang less intense schizophrenia. So yeah, but this was rejected, that's what I'm saying. Next is that the non-suicidal self-injury disorder. Actually, nalagay na pala to. Medyo outdated, I guess. Medyo outdated siguro itong reference ko kasi bagong-bago lang din yung non-suicidal self-injury, diba? So, ito na yun. Pero nalagay na pala siya doon sa bago, kaya X na to. So, there is no doubt that many individuals experience the phenomena described in this proposed criteria sets. The question is whether these experiences should be categorized as form of mental illness or understood to be part of the range of normal human experience. Kaya hindi pa siya nalalagay kasi for further study pa, baka naman kasi normal human experience lang siya, tapos ilalagay niya sa DSM. So that's what do we call this? That's the burden there. Whether this is a form of mental disorder ba, or this is just a range of normal human experience. So yun. That's overall my report, and hindi pa ito tapos. This will be continued by Abby Aquino, our next reporter. So, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've learned a lot or kahit konti lang from this reporting. Thank you so much.